It is just so silent in here. I like can check my Apple Watch and like my heart rate is like 2 or 3 or 5 beats per minute lower in this than in, you know, anything else that I drive. Welcome to Downshift. My name is Matt, and I have had the good fortune of spending the last few days with the new 2025 Royce Cullinan. This is the Series 2. This is the facelift, and what I'm going to do today is walk you around this thing and show you the 19 things that you need to know. Let's get into it. Now before we get into the meat and potatoes, I think there's a couple funky little features we should cover. Like for one, you might expect that you have floating or self-righting center caps, and you do indeed. And your turn signal sounds like clinking of a champagne flute. And your air vents have the most satisfying sound ever. And these plungers are actually what turns the vent on and off. This is off, and this is on, and it is the most satisfying, the best weighted feeling I've ever felt from an air vent controller. And leading the way, you do have your Spirit of Ecstasy hood ornament. And yes, it does do the thing where if someone tries to steal it, it'll suck it down into the hood. It'll also be able to be controlled when locking the car. You can set it so when you lock the car, it'll automatically recede underneath the hood. And I even have it set to a customized button in the cabin so I can control when it goes up, when it goes down, and if I just want to play with it at a stoplight, I guess I can. And as you expect, you do have coach or suicide doors, but unlike the Escalade IQ that we were in earlier this year and the BMW i7, it's not automatic opening, but you do have a button in the rear and also in the front to automatically close the doors. And I can even use this button here to close the passenger side door. You do have to hold it, but I've also gotten it to work by just pressing it once. Pretty nice. You can also automatically close the doors from the outside of the car. But one of the interesting things is on each of the door cards, front and rear, you've got this pocket here. Now I don't know what the intended use for this pocket is, but it does fit things like sunglasses pretty well, wallets, and even phones, although it's kind of an interesting place to put those things. So if you know exactly what this is supposed to be for, leave it down in the comments. And this next one's just a little bit of a fun fact, but if you didn't know where the Cullinan name came from, the Cullinan diamond is the largest gem quality diamond ever found on Earth. And that's where this guy gets its name. And we do have Rolls-Royce Bespoke audio. It's their own branded system and it does sound spectacular, but don't touch the speaker grills because they are sharp. My wife hurt her finger, Paulo hurt his finger, and it is a little bit like a cheese grater. So it's for looking and listening, not touching. And down beneath, even your feet are treated to luxury. This is thick lamb's wool carpeting, and it is, well, it's spectacular. We've got a pretty normal person's rear seat, but if you wanted to have a little bit more refinement and isolation, you can actually spec some sort of plexi isolator to go between the rear seats and the trunk if you want to isolate some of the noise and vibration from the trunk so you have a more serene and relaxed cabin up here. And when I say everything is satisfying to use, that even includes the little mirror adjusters. You've got this little joystick that is just weighted perfectly, and it's a little bit notchy at the end of the throat. It is just the coolest little thing. And our spec has sprung for the two-tone steering wheel to match the rest of the interior detailing. And it looks spectacular, but it's also the thicker of the steering wheels. And if I hadn't known that, I wouldn't have been able to tell because it is still pretty thin by modern steering wheel standards. But if you go for just the normal black steering wheel, it'll be even thinner. And on the left is your start-stop button, like in a Porsche. And behind the steering wheel, of course, is your gear selector, and there's this button on it called low. And this is their, I guess, equivalent to a sport mode. It's gonna throw the gearbox into a lower gear to give you a little bit more response from that twin-turbo V12. There are no other discernible drive modes. It just is what it is. There's also no auto start stop. And it's because this is solely focused on being a luxury product, and things like start stop and reduced engine responses and things like an eco mode would be unbecoming in something like a Rolls-Royce in the pursuit of ultimate luxury and smoothness. And yet you have buttons for an off-road setting and a hill descent setting. And this is legitimate off-road. It turns traction off and everything. So with that, with the air suspension, you actually probably could go a lot of places in this Cullinan. And I think I mentioned that there's a little issue with cup holders. Now this is a standard size water bottle, at least down here, and it fits in every other car I've ever tested. But it does not fit in the cup holder of the Cullinan. Maybe it fits in the rear seat. Let's try it. Not really, and I'd be even less secure about this one. And this cup holder has a little problem as well, because listen to this. That's not a sound I want my Rolls-Royce making. But another classic Rolls-Royce staple is the umbrella. They live in each of the rear doors, and they have this button underneath. You eject it, and then you've got your Rolls-Royce umbrella. Pretty cool. Throw it back in here, and it clicks into place. And we also have this VIN plaque. It says Rolls-Royce of Goodwood. It's got their signia here, and the VIN number, or model number, or serial number, something like that. We've got our button here to close the rear door. The rear doors close slower than the front doors, and not by a little bit. But here, in addition to our Shooting Star headliner, we actually have a few buttons. Now, these lights are on because the car is sensing that I just got in the car. But you've got this like old English street lantern light, and that gives almost like an ambient glow here, not to the brighter LEDs in the back, but just in the front. And it also will illuminate all the door handles, again, to make things a little bit easier to find if you're just hanging out in the back or the front of your Cullinan. And while the digital instrument cluster isn't super customizable, it does sparkle right next to the needle with stardust. And that's kind of cool. And in your center infotainment display, you've got this, traffic camera information, and it's geo-locked or geo-fenced, so depending on where you are, this may or may not work, but what it's going to do is it's going to warn you of upcoming speed cameras, so you can adjust your speed in case maybe you accidentally started speeding. That's a handy little feature. All right, so with all those little things covered, let's zoom back out and talk about what this is and what it competes against. Now, this Cullinan is the epitome of luxury SUV. It's the most expensive SUV that you can buy, and it makes sense, and we'll talk about that a little bit more as we go. But I guess it could kind of, quote unquote, compete against things like a Mercedes G-Wagon, a Maybach GLS, a Range Rover Autobiography, an Aston Martin DBX, a Bentley Bentayga, and maybe even the Ferrari Purosangue. And by those, I just mean the most realistic competitors to this are maybe a G-Wagon, a Bentayga, and a GLS. Maybe kind of sort of the Range Rover as well, but the rest, the DBX, the Purosangue, those are more sporty oriented, and this makes no compromises of luxury in pursuit of sport. So what's the big deal? What's new for 2025? Well, 2025 introduces the update, or the Series 2. It's kind of the mid-cycle refresh, you can think of it. And we'll talk about what that entails as we walk around the car. And under the hood, we have our main event. This is our 6.75 liter twin turbocharged V12. 563 horsepower, you'll get 29 more on your black badge, and 627 pound-feet of torque. Again, you'll get 34 more in your black badge. But 0 to 60 here is still good for the mid to high 4 seconds, so easily under 5. And it is so smooth. It is crazy refined and quiet until you get it high into the rev range. Now, the EPA says you're going to get about 14 mpg, but we did our Lakeshore Loop fuel economy test and came back with 18.4. Now, that does tend to flatter cars. We've been hovering around the mid-15s, but one of the things that they've done to continue the uber smooth focus is remove auto start-stop. There's no interruption of power, there's no interruption in your smoothness. And just a little fun fact here, your oil cap has the double R's on it. But power goes from your V12 through an 8-speed automatic to all 4 wheels. You get standard all-wheel drive, as you might expect. But this thing is large. It's got similar dimensions to a Tahoe. It's about 6,000 pounds of curb weight, and it's nice that you have a rear steer module here. The turn-in is actually pretty aggressive. It makes me wish the seats were a little bit more bolstered, but that would be sacrificing a little bit of comfort in trade-off of sportiness, which is not what this thing is about. But you do have 4-corner air suspension, and you do have controls on that center console to adjust things like ride height. The ride is immaculate in this thing, and we'll talk more about that later behind the wheel. And then when it comes to styling, like I mentioned, this thing is huge, and it strikes you right away just how big this thing is when you see it in person. But it is draped in the most beautiful of colors. This is bohemian red, and there's red in it, there's some browns in it, there's some plum in it, depending on where you are on the car. It just looks spectacular. Now, our Series 2 does introduce the newer updated face for the Cullinan, which means that we have revised running lights up here. Our Pantheon grille is now illuminated, but in a tasteful fashion, and our lower fascia bumper area is a little bit more curved upwards to mimic the chine of a speedboat, which is according to them, but it does look a little bit better and a little bit cleaner in terms of design, at least in my opinion. And then around the side, we have the coolest 23-inch wheels. They're almost $11,000, but I think they're worth every penny. Paulo doesn't agree, but what does he know? They're really, really cool. They're Gatsby-esque Art Deco, and they just look the business. But the rest of the profile is really pretty simple. It's classic Rolls-Royce coachwork, it's classic SUV profile, and there's really not a lot going on. Now, since we don't have the black badge, you can see chrome accenting all over the place, but it is done tastefully and in fitting with the personality of the car. But the subtlety continues even to a more aggressive degree, you could say, on the rear. It's just simple taillights, slightly revised lower bumper. You do have quad tips coming out of 2 outlets, but there's no badging anywhere on the exterior of this car that says Cullinan. And I think that's kind of cool. But when we come to the trunk, you press it once and it'll open just the top. If you press it twice, then it'll open the top and the bottom. But you do have, obviously, your split opening tailgate. Now, this is probably the most practical, most dailyable, most utilitarian Rolls-Royce that they sell. The trunk you're looking at is about 24 cubic feet of space. Your rear seats can fold. If you go for like the executive package, you might remove some of that option, or if you go for the plexi partition that'll isolate the trunk from the cabin, you'll lose that. And if you go for the champagne chiller, that fridge will take up a little bit of space in the trunk and move you down to 21 cubic feet. But it's very, very nice. There's a button down here that'll actually adjust the floor to make it easier to load longer items up into the cabin. And that's a pretty shockingly utilitarian feature in something like a Rolls-Royce, no? And we are going to check out the rear seats. They're not automatic opening doors, but again, there's your little umbrella. But look at the door card. We are missing sunshades. I believe you can get that, or some sort of curtain. We've got our little pocket that we talked about, and then chrome everywhere. Don't touch these, they're sharp. Open pore wood. 2-toning, tri-toning of leathers. It's leather wrapped even in the door card bin, which is spectacular. Seat adjustments here in the door, USB-C charging, and then a secret little pocket continuation down there. We've got illuminated tread plates here, and again, that thick wool floor matting continues into the back. We've got heaters for our feet, but the space here is just spectacular. It's huge. I'm gonna step in at 6'1", and I have a cavern of knee room in front of me. I've got loads and loads of headroom below the Starry Night headliner. You can catch some shooting stars, which is just the coolest thing. And Rolls-Royce did it first. You can get it in other stuff, but they did it the best. We've also got our button here to close the door. The rear doors close much slower than the front doors. I think I mentioned that. But you've also got a button to adjust your headrest electronically. And it's just a nice big space. Now, we do have buttons here to control our picnic tables. Again, open pore wood, very, very nice. We've got this button here that deploys the TV. It's not going to turn on because I don't have the car on, but you can send it away with a simple press of a button. I promise. And then it'll go. But down here we do have 4 zones of climate and the same nice tinging sound that you get from the air vents. Heated seats back here, no cooled, no massage in our spec, but of course you can get it, and some chargers down below. But just wonderful, fantastically comfortable, and really, really luxe back here. And we'll check out our front seats. They are actually pretty standard spec. Now, we do have some new options for 2025. You can get a double twill design, which replaces the leather with a more textile-oriented material, and what you can get, and what I would option, is what's called placed perforation. They take these little perforations in the leather and they orient them in terms of graduating size to mimic clouds over the Goodwood factory, and that is just the coolest thing. You see some images I'll lay on screen, and it's just the coolest thing. But white piping, ardent red for your tertiary color, gray inner, black Rolls-Royce embroidered into the headrest. This is a free of charge option, and then black. So there's loads of toning going on here. Heated, cooled, massage, and you've got buttons to control all that stuff on your door over here. And in your center console area, you also, of course, have a heated steering wheel. This is our 2-tone steering wheel, which is a little bit thicker, as I think we've talked about. And overall, it's a great place to spend some time behind the wheel. And I know I said the engine was the main event here, but the truth is it's really just the cabin design overall. Now for the Series 2 here, we have this full width glass pane that stretches from pillar to pillar. And over here we have little elements of LED diodes in the passenger side of the dash that illuminate to a crazy little sophisticated degree. And then of course we do have our analog clock, but now it's accompanied by the Spirit of Ecstasy. She's underlit and very dramatic looking at night. But it is just the suppleness of the leathers, the tonings, the textures, the open pore wood through everything, and the physical buttons that make this thing not just beautiful to look at, but super easy and relaxing to use. Everything has a nice feedback, a nice click, a nice weight to it, and it is just spectacular in terms of build quality and materials. And then in terms of technology, it's not so showy and in your face, but it does bring you everything that you could want. I do have a full head-up display that shows me a bunch of information. I do have a fully digital instrument cluster, although what you see is kind of what you get. There's not a load of customization going on in the cluster. Some people have left remarks on other Rolls-Royce videos saying that they wish that the digital instrument cluster remained the analog gauges. Leave it down in the comments what you think. I can definitely see that argument holding water, but over here is your main event. This is your 10-inch screen. It's not an enormously inflated screen for the sake of having a huge screen, but it does have new and updated Spirit software, wireless Apple CarPlay, wireless Android Auto, fantastic 360 cameras, as you might expect, with backup assistance and 3D views and car washes and things like that. The car almost looks Vanta black, but it does, I don't know if this is coming through in camera, but it does have a little bit of that like bohemian red coming through. So it is color matched to the car. It's just maybe a little bit underexposed from the camera. But the software itself, it's quick, it's responsive. I've got everything that I could want here. I've got a voice assistant and all that typical stuff. But when it comes to your driver assist suite, you do have adaptive cruise, but we don't have lane keep assist on our tester. Of course, you can get it if you spend more money, but interesting to see that we've crested over $500,000 and we don't have a lane keep here. And then I mentioned it, so we might as well talk about price. Now, a Cullinan starts at $405,000. It starts at $470,000 if you go up to the black badge. It gets you a little bit more power and gets some of the chrome stuff accented as black. But as tested, we're here at $512, almost $1,000. That's a lot of money, but this is also the nicest SUV I've ever been in. So let's get behind the wheel and talk a little bit more about the value. Hey guys, real quick, Matt here. Just wanted to say I hope you've been enjoying the video. If you have, would really appreciate you hitting that subscribe button. I know it doesn't seem like a big deal, but it does go a long way in helping us get access to cars sooner and get access to manufacturer engineers so we can get more information on the cars and get you more information so you can make better decisions. So would really appreciate you hitting that subscribe, like, comment, the whole YouTube thing. But with that, let's get back to the video. Rolls-Royce Cullinan does not have a sport mode, but it does have a low setting on the transmission. So we are in low. Brake boost. Oh, violent. Jeez, it's fast. Oh, V12. I mean, it's not like supercar fast, obviously. Think about what this thing is. But it is dainty almost in a corner. I mean, it's heavy, large, but the rear steer, the delicacy on the steering wheel, you don't get a lot from the steering wheel, obviously, but it will hustle if you ask it to. This thing is, this has been an overwhelming experience a little bit. I pride myself a lot on being very objective, very thorough, removing my emotions from it, from the videos, and just talking about the car as it is. And I think we've done most of that so far, so I'm gonna geek out a little bit now, because this is freaking cool. Like, this is just, I don't care who you are, any of the biases that you have, everyone kind of respects a Rolls-Royce, at least to some degree. It's just cool. It is just exclusive, and it is just, it kind of transcends all of the little ticky-tacky nonsense here and there, because it is a V12 in the most opulent and luxurious and best put together with the best material cabin. It's not the best looking thing in the world, but that's subjective, that's personal opinion. But it is just incredible to sit in this thing, to drive this thing. It makes me want to take my shoes off, this lamb's wool carpeting, because the pile is so thick and it is so soft. Through a corner. It's soft without being sloppy. It is a near perfect ride. I mean, it is a perfect ride, because I can't think of any one car that I've ever driven that rides as good as this thing. Bite from the front tires, rear steer working. I thought I was going to get understeer in that corner. I didn't. but it is the ride. It is the waft, the way that it just kind of soaks up. And I was watching some of the rolling footage that we got with this thing, so the car-to-car camera, and you can see the suspension kind of working, and you can see the weighted center cap staying still with the wheels spinning around. It just looks like it's just so effortless. And I hate that I keep using that word, but it is just so effortless the way that this thing goes down the road. It soaks everything up, and everything is so silent. It is so quiet in here. More than the smoothness of the V12, more than the suppleness of the ride. It is the quietness and the refinement in the cabin here that strikes me more than anything. It is just so silent in here. I can check my Apple Watch, and my heart rate is 2 or 3 or 5 beats per minute lower in this than in anything else that I drive. So it has a direct correlation to relaxing me behind the wheel here. I can throw my cooled seat on or my heated seat on. I can get my massage. I can just waft effortlessly down the road, not worry about things. It does have a relaxing sensation to it. And I do feel like I'm just kind of rambling aimlessly a little bit, but the point is, everything that you thought a Rolls-Royce was going to be, everything that I thought this week was going to be with this car, it has been. And that doesn't happen very often. So thank you to Tori, thank you to Rolls-Royce for letting me have a go, and we'll see you in the next one.